In 1968, one man pitched so well that baseball changed the rules of the game to stop him. His earned run average that year was 1.12, the lowest any pitcher has posted over a full season in more than a century. 9 innings of work. Barely one run allowed. Night after night. For 6 straight months. His name was Bob Gibson. And the season he put together didn't just win games, it broke the sport. To understand what he did, you have to understand who he was. Bob Gibson was born in Omaha, Nebraska, in 1935, the youngest of 7 children. His father died before he was born. His mother scrubbed floors and took in laundry to keep the family alive. And Gibson himself nearly didn't survive childhood at all. He had rickets. He had asthma. He had pneumonia and a heart murmur, and doctors told his family he might not live to grow up. He lived. He was raised, in large part, by an older brother named Josh, a hard man who drilled him on a dirt lot until baseball became less a game than a way out. Gibson grew into an athlete unlike almost anyone around him. He starred in basketball and baseball at Creighton University. For a brief time he even barnstormed with the Harlem Globetrotters, spinning basketballs for money before he ever threw a pitch that mattered. But it was on the mound that the world learned to fear him. Because Bob Gibson pitched angry. He glared at hitters from under the brim of his cap. He refused to speak to opposing players, even at the All-Star game, even men he genuinely liked, because he decided that friendliness was weakness. He threw inside without apology. A batter who dug in too comfortably got a fastball under the chin. Gibson believed the space over home plate belonged to him, and he defended it the way a man defends his own front door. By 1968, he was already a legend in the making. He had been the hero of 2 World Series, in 1964 against the Yankees and in 1967 against the Red Sox, winning the deciding games himself. And in that 1967 season, a line drive shattered a bone in his leg. Gibson stood on the broken leg and pitched to 3 more batters before he finally collapsed. That was the man. That was the will. But nothing in his career, nothing in anyone's career, had prepared the league for what came next. Because in the spring of 1968, something shifted. And the best hitters in the world suddenly could not touch him. That season, they would stop trying to hit Bob Gibson. They would start trying, simply, to survive him. It began quietly. A win here. A shutout there. And then it stopped being quiet. From early June to late July, Bob Gibson pitched like no one in the history of the game. He threw 5 complete game shutouts in a row. He won 11 straight starts. Over one stretch of roughly 95 innings, he allowed just 2 earned runs, a pace that isn't dominance, it's disappearance. The other team simply stopped scoring, as if someone had turned off the lights. The numbers from that summer still read like typos. 22 wins, 13 shutouts, 13 entire games in which the other side never once crossed the plate. 28 complete games, in an era when finishing what you started still meant something. 268 strikeouts. More than 300 innings pitched. And that earned run average, 1.12, a number so impossibly low that grown men who played this game for a living described stepping into the batter's box against him as hopeless. He wasn't simply overpowering people,
Or at least he used to.
He was breaking their will. A slider that vanished at the knees the instant they committed. A fastball that rode in hard on their hands. And those eyes, that flat, merciless refusal to give a single inch, staring down from a pitcher's mound that, in 1968, rose 15 inches above the rest of the field. Remember that height. It matters. Gibson won the National League's Most Valuable Player award that season, a hitter's honor, handed to a pitcher. He won the Cy Young Award as the best pitcher in his league. And he carried the St. Louis Cardinals back to the World Series, where he would throw the single most dominant game the Fall Classic has ever seen. Game 1. October. Against the Detroit Tigers and their 31-game winner, Denny McLain, the last pitcher in history to win 30 games in a season. Gibson struck out 17 Detroit batters that afternoon. 17. It set a World Series record that has stood for more than half a century, and still stands today. Hitters walked back to the dugout shaking their heads. Some of them laughed on the way, because there was nothing else left to do. And then, because baseball is cruel, it did not end in triumph. The series stretched to a seventh and final game. Gibson took the mound again, matched against Detroit's Mickey Lolick, with the season hanging on every pitch. Late in a scoreless duel, a fly ball climbed into the gray October sky toward center field. Curt Flood, one of the finest defensive outfielders alive, misjudged it. He took a single step in, then broke back too late. The ball carried over his head and rolled to the wall. Detroit scored. The Cardinals lost. Bob Gibson had just pitched the greatest season a pitcher has ever thrown, and he lost the last game that mattered. But by then, the men who ran baseball had already seen enough. Gibson wasn't the disease. He was the symptom. And the cure would rewrite the rulebook. Because Bob Gibson was not alone in 1968. All across the sport that year, the pitchers had taken over. They called it the year of the pitcher, and the name was earned in full. Denny McLain won 31 games, and no one has won 30 since. Don Drysdale threw 58 consecutive scoreless innings, a record that stood for 2 decades. In the American League, the man who won the batting title hit just .301, the lowest average ever to lead a league, before or since. Entire lineups of professional hitters batted under .240. Shutouts piled up. Scoreboards froze. Fans stopped coming through the turnstiles. The most thrilling thing in all of baseball, the run, the moment somebody actually crosses the plate, was quietly vanishing from the game. And the people who owned that game understood something very simple. Nobody buys a ticket to watch nothing happen. So in the winter after 1968, baseball did something it almost never does. It changed the field itself. They lowered the pitcher's mound from 15 inches down to 10. 5 inches. It doesn't sound like much. But to a pitcher it was everything. Less downhill leverage, less deception, less of the steep angle that made a fastball feel like it was falling out of the sky onto the plate. And they shrank the strike zone, handing hitters back the pitches they had been losing for years. It worked. Almost overnight, the offense came back. Batting averages climbed. Runs returned. The game the owners had been so afraid of losing was saved, by quietly taking a little bit of power away from the men standing on the mound. And that is why one season, by one man, still matters today. Bob Gibson's 1.12 didn't just make him a legend. It marked the exact moment the rules of baseball bent around a single human being. Every pitcher who has thrown from a 10-inch mound in the last 50-odd years, every single one of them, has done it, in part, because of what happened in the summer of 1968. The ground they stand on was literally lowered to make them beatable. And the record itself has never fallen. In the entire live ball era, no pitcher has finished a full season with an ERA under 1.12. Given the way the game is played now, the pitch counts, the deep bullpens, the fact that no starter is ever again asked to carry a whole season on his shoulders the way Gibson carried 1968, it is fair to wonder whether anyone ever will. We remember the home run hitters. Ruth, Aaron. We build the whole story of baseball around the men who score. But for one long summer, a poor kid from Omaha who wasn't even supposed to survive childhood became so unhittable that the sport itself had to rebuild the ground beneath his feet just to make him ordinary again. They lowered the mountain, because they could not move the man. So here is the question worth sitting with. When one person becomes so good that a game has to change its own rules simply to survive them, is that the greatest compliment a sport can ever pay a player? Or is it the loneliest? Follow for more.